Hi, this is Rob Aspin and welcome to MWCM's 2-minute update on the market. In our last podcast, we basically highlighted the view that there was a very high risk that the US market was going to suffer at least a 5% sell-off. And a couple of our listeners came back to us and questioned us in terms of 5%, only 5%. And the reality is when you look at the analysis that we do, there are two legs, if you like, to the process of determining what the markets may or may not do over the next 12 months. The short term is really looking at the number of days that the market has not had at least a 5% sell-off. And if you look at the charts that we're going to bring up on the screen now, you can see that the chart for the number of days without a sell-off is actually now pretty much at record levels, 395 days. And this compares with periods in the 90s where it got up to 394. And then if you look further back in the 60s, 386. Basically, what this indicates is that for a period of 395 days, we have not had a 5% or more sell-off. And that would indicate that we're due for one, shall we say. And this is backed up by another chart, the relative strength indicator, which would also highlight that the up movements in the market are significantly greater than the down movements over a specified period of time. It's a momentum indicator, and basically momentum right now is extremely positive for the market. And typically that tends to peak and then wane and potentially even go negative as people take profit. The longer term measure of what the markets may do is really valuation. So we've got a couple of charts here. If you look at price to sales, for example, the market is extremely expensive, and the only time that we got up to these sorts of levels right now on a P2S basis was back in the late 90s. Another chart that we'd like to highlight is price to earnings, and again, we may not be at the peak levels of the 1990s, but we're very close to it. The markets are, in the US that is, are expensive. So not only are we overdue a 5% sell-off, but valuation would indicate to us that we may be due for a larger sell-off. Now, I admit that with the tax reductions or the offsets in the US, that earnings will potentially increase, but that's already priced in, I would argue. So I would be fairly cautious on the US at this moment, and that's why we do prefer to have more global exposure with a preference to Japanese equities overall. So that would be where we would do the most allocation. But for those of you that made good money last year on the S&P, we'd be looking to diversify and take some of that off the table. Take care and have a great week ahead.